question might be if you expose yourself as a Christian if you came out as a Christian, this would jeopardize your ability to bring some other Jews.
Yes, and will destroy my family. The only way I could do it is if I were to leave everything and become a monk. That would be the only way out.
Is that out of the question?
It's not out of the question.
Hasidic Judaism is a Jewish religious group that arose as a spiritual revival movement in the territory of contemporary Western Ukraine during the 18th century and spread rapidly throughout Eastern Europe. Today, most affiliates reside in Israel and the United States. Israel ben Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov, is regarded as its founding father, and his disciples developed and disseminated it. Present-day Hasidism is a subgroup within ultra-Orthodox Haredi Judaism and is noted for its religious and social conservatism and social seclusion. Its members adhere closely both to Orthodox Jewish practice, with the movement's own unique emphases, and the traditions of Eastern European Jews. Many of the latter, including various special styles of dress and the use of the Yiddish language, are nowadays associated almost exclusively with Hasidism. Hasidic thought draws heavily on Lurianic Kabbalah. The adherents of Hasidism are organized into independent dynastic courts, each headed by its own hereditary leader, a Rebbe. Reverence and submission to the Rebbe are key tenets, and he is considered a spiritual authority with whom the follower must bond to gain closeness to God. Affiliation is often retained in families for generations, and being Hasidic is as much a sociological factor, entailing as it does birth into a specific community and allegiance to a dynasty of Rebbes, as it is a purely religious one. There are several courts with many thousands of member households each, and hundreds of smaller ones. As of 2021, there were over 150,000 Hasidic households worldwide, about 5% of the global Jewish population.
I was born in South America. I came as a student to the United States, and finally, after finishing my degrees, I end up in New York. I was raised as Masorati, who means traditional Jew, mostly of Sephardic background, and later I joined a Hasidic group in New York.
How did you end up coming to New York?
Well, it was a process. I was living in other states. I was in the Midwest, and I met a shaliach, means a person sent by the yeshivas to collect money, and I befriended this gentleman. He was a very, very spiritual person. He brought me into the Hasidic community. I will try to define and separate in two parts: Orthodox and non-Orthodox. Orthodox means attachment to the law of Moses and to the law of the rabbis, and non-Orthodox is a questioning of the law of Moses, means that everything is relative, it's a relativism, and basically in many ways atheism. Then among Among Orthodox, you have some that are more into the strict keeping of the law. That these are the Lithuanian Jews or the Orthodox Sephardic Jews, and then you have more mystical groups, and the best known in the West are the Hasidim. Among the Hasidim, Hasidim try to keep to themselves. Most of them reject the idea of secular education. They are more mystical, more into the oldest traditions. But the question is, what does to be a Hasid means? Hesed means loving kindness. Then who is a Hasid is a man who practices loving kindness.
Where did they originate?
The beginning was in Ukraine, parts of Russia, then Poland. Everything starts with Rabbi Israel, known as the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov means the master of the good name. And he was a mystic who was born in the year 1699, could be as early as 1698, and he died definitely in the year 1760.
Having grown up as a secular Jew for the most part, as you explained earlier, what attracted you to the Hasidic faith?
The Hasidim, okay, the attractive of the Hasidim is, number one is the devotion in prayer. They keep themselves separate to keep a level of holiness, like the Essenes or like the Hasidim in time of the Maccabees. They were people who separate themselves to keep the law and to keep a life of prayer and a life of devotion separated from the corruption of the world. Then they are not only hiding from the non-Jews, but they are hiding from Jews who are contaminated with the secular world.
And this attracted you. Were you married at the time?
I was married at that time, and that was actually through my late wife. I came to know the Hasidim.
And this was in the Midwest?
That was in the Midwest, yes.
Okay, so was there any kind of ritual you had to go through? How did you become?
No, you don't need to do through any ritual, but there is a practice that Hasidim have that is go every day to the mikvah. The mikvah is like a pool that is filled with living waters, means waters that are not drawn. They could come from rain, or they could happen to be a natural body of water. And then you immerse there completely 3 times. A, to clean ritual impurities. Number 2, to get ready and to be able to serve God with a pure spirit, pure body and pure spirit. The first thing was the reading of Daniel 7, when refers to that one like a son of man.
I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed.
during the Jewish education, very little emphasis is given to the prophetic writings. Daniel, for a strange reason, is classified not as a prophet, but as a writings, means the lowest end of the Tanakh, that is the Hebrew Bible. Then in Daniel, I found something very, very interesting that now it reminds me the text of the book of Revelation, Apocalypse, that is in Daniel 7. I saw, and he has a vision when he sees the beasts and everything else. Later in the vision, once he goes through this apocalyptic imagery that appears in many other pseudepigrapha, means non-canonical books, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man came, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him before. He was given dominion, honor, kingship, so that all peoples, nations, and languages would serve him. His dominion would be an everlasting dominion that would never pass, and his kingship would never be destroyed. And as for me, Daniel, my spirit became uneasy in its sheath, and the visions of my head bewildered me. I approached one of the standing ones, and I asked for the truth concerning to this. So he spoke to me and said, making the interpretation of the matters known to me, the immense beasts which are four kingdoms will arise from the earth, but the holy supreme ones will receive the kingship, and they will inherit the kingship forever, forever and ever. Then you have the Son of Man that approached to the Ancient of Days, means God, and then he becomes equal to him. He's not a military man, he's not a conqueror, he's not a regular person like as was expected in later years. But there is a man that there is a Son of Man that approaches God, and is given to him all the power of the kingdom of God. By reading already in the New Testament, you see when Christ is condemned, he's going to be condemned by the high priest council. It's not necessarily a Sanhedrin as a regular, because couldn't congregate then, is the council of the high priest. In the moment that Jesus called himself the Son of Man, is when they blow up and he's attacked. He's attacked and slapped and insulted by the high priest and his companions, Caiaphas and Annas and all of those of priestly rank. Then, what is the meaning of Son of Man is very powerful, because they immediately thought about the Son of Man of Daniel, and they know that this is the real Messiah. Then he's calling himself Messiah, and he's calling himself equal to God. Then this is a stronger argument than the argument from Isaiah. But because Isaiah has been refuted many times in the Jewish response during the Middle Ages, then there is a lot of literature, and becomes difficult to use that as an argument. As a secondary argument, yes, but not as primary. I had an experience. I was in a synagogue one day. There were only 9 men. There were only 9 men there, and you need 10 men to do the prayer. And I see a man that was different to every other, but apparently nobody saw him because they were not counting him. And he says, "Go ahead, pray. I'm here." And then I recognized it was the Lord Jesus.
In the synagogue.
He says, "I'm with you, but go ahead and pray."
He said it's for you.
Yeah, to me. Not anybody else. Anybody else didn't see him. But people started praying.
Even though they didn't have
The quorum. They didn't have.
they began praying after Christ told you to pray.
Yes. Then other man came later, but was already, we were quite advanced in the prayer. Then that was the interesting part. That was that was an experience. There are many things in the prayer book that point to that. And then you have many things that are not necessarily explicit. Well, the use of many of the words of Jesus that are taken from the Psalms in the prayer before going retiring to sleep, like in your hands I commend my spirit, and many other things like that. Or the issue of forgiveness that you see every night, that sounds very familiar, very, very familiar for anybody who knows early Christianity, with the exception of one line that is inserted much later. Then this line has to do with reincarnation, and that was something introduced in the Middle Ages into Judaism because it's not a Jewish concept. Then reincarnation. Judaism is supposed to believe in resurrection, not in reincarnation, because there cannot be reincarnation and then resurrection. What, a man is going to resurrect with 20 different bodies? No, no way. Then says, Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who had angered or vexed me or sinned against me, either physically or financially, against my honor or anything else that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed. And let me omit that line. It says, or any Israelite, may no man be punished on my account. May it be your will, Lord, my God, and Lord of my fathers, that I shall sin no more, nor repeat my sins, neither shall I again anger you, nor do what is wrong in your eyes. The sins that I have committed, erase in your abundant mercies, but not through suffering or severe illnesses. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable before you, Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Yeah, I was reading from the Jewish prayer book, the Sidur Tehillat Hashem, and this was from the translation of the beginning of the prayer before retiring to bed. That will be equivalent to the Christian Compline. And then there was something that we found in the Amidah, means the standing prayer that is done 3 times a day during the prayer cycle. If we read it in English, has no meaning, but if we read in the Hebrew, then we see a hint to something. Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. What it means, they bring forth the horn of salvation would be, or to bring forth the horn that would be the power of Yeshua, that is the Mashiach.
Yeshua means
salvation. Joshua or Yeshua, yes.
Jesus.
Joshua becomes Jesus in Koine Greek, that becomes later in Byzantine Greek Jesus.
And that's his name you saw there in that prayer.
Yes. Then the name was in the prayer, and that you could find in the Midah. Then there are more and more hidden links that you find in the prayer, because even that this is not taken directly from the scriptures, is based on the scriptures. But all the other prayers are psalms and pieces from different scriptural passages. Then there is no way to hide it.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment when you realized that Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God and God himself? Do you remember when you first started realizing what the truth was and how you felt?
The revelation was in the moment that I saw this man. I realized I was a different man. He had was different because normally a man, you can see the face of a man because the face reflects light. In this case, you see the light is from the inside out. It's not from the outside in and reflects. Then you see a difference between the sun and the moon. The sun is a source of light. The moon is only reflecting a little bit of the sunlight, and that's what we can see.
Yeah. Take us from the moment you saw that man in the synagogue to your baptism.
Question was to look for him. Where was he? Where was he hiding? Then I realized that it was really a supernatural being, not a regular man. The next thing that I saw was a painting of Chagall, that you see the Jewish Christ with his talit tied to the groin, crucified. Chagall was a Jewish painter and vitralist, and he used to make different works like that. He has one in which he represents Christ as a crucified and says, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. Then this connects directly with the vision.
So you saw Chagall's painting as a kind of icon.
As an icon. As an icon. Then was in my heart. In my heart for many years. Many years, and I started studying, reading, and everything else. I was keeping a secret. My wife had a vision of Mary, and then she died.
Explain to us how you decided to go get baptized. What was the final step?
I was driving around Astoria, and I met this priest. In that moment was Archbishop Pavlos. He got the right smile, the right leadership. That in some way he reminded me the Christ who appeared in the synagogue. Not physically, but something about him that was real. That was not like I met Catholic priests, I met Protestant ministers, I met some other Orthodox clergymen, but they were common men. They didn't have anything that was any connection to the supernatural. Then even that he didn't look to be like a super religious man, he He had that charisma that he could bring people to Christ. In that moment, I already started thinking about baptism. But he was holding me. The holding that helped me to desire it more. Desire it more to...
Explain holding.
Means not to say, okay, I'll baptize you tomorrow. And then I met a monk, a Romanian monk from Father Constantinos. He was studying at the Fordham University with the Jesuits. He said, okay, we are going to start like this. You're going to get baptized. I will get you baptized. But you need to do this. Every day you want to learn together a little bit of the fathers, a little bit of this. I knew already a few things because I already went through it. I was familiar with Irenaeus, with Augustine, with the Didache, with St. Polycarp, with St. Ignatius, also Clement of Alexandria, St. Kirill, John Climacus, and I had very good readings on monastics, on the Philokalia, or the Father of the Desert. Then later in the Russian Philokalia, Father Nazarius and Saint Seraphim. But he said, we're going to do like this. You're going to confess to me, but we're going to do like continuously. Every 2 times a week, you confess. That was before baptism. And then he gave me advice, and then we tried to do a lifelong confession to be able to go through baptism. In that way, I could get used to confession, number one, and the other thing was to profit from it spiritually, because there is a lot of things and that happens now. The new calendar is Greek, rarely they confess. That's not good, because if you don't confess, you're accumulating garbage. It gets to a point in which you totally forget what is the function, what you need to do, what is your way of worshiping and respecting God.
So how did you finally get baptized? How long did it take?
Took like 6 months in the cathedral in Manhattan, where Father was staying, was baptized there, and I had a famous theologian as my godfather, John McGuckin.
Do you remember the moment you were baptized?
Yes, vividly. Into the water, into a tremendous bathtub, total immersion 3 times. Similar with the completion of the mikvah experience of immersing 3 times into the water.
You were given the name?
I was named after St. Vitus, who was a child martyr of the year 303 that was under Diocletian.
Are you still a part of that church?
No.
Why?
Because of practices that are abominable according to Christianity.
Why were you baptized at a church that you didn't agree with their theology?
First, I didn't know. I didn't think about the idea of the calendar. That was one thing, but that was secondary, to be honest. Was secondary. The question is, they were plagued with modernism, relativism, and all that. They were actually doing practices that were improper for a Christian to do. And they were tolerating things that were improper for a Christian. Like tolerating homosexuality. They don't have a position against abortion. Ecumenism is another problem, because there are 2 ways of talking about ecumenism. For me, ecumenism is to try to bring all the other churches into ecumene. What they do is basically they are tolerating other people's heresies and consider them valid, like accepting a valid baptism of a Protestant, or people that are totally disconnected with Christianity already. I consider myself that I think that the only way to be Orthodox is to be Orthodox in all ways, not half the way, not 3/4 of the way, but 100%. Then the problem, I don't see exactly the calendar, but I see other things like ecumenism and modernism. Then the calendar is simply a guard against those things. Because the moment that Orthodox celebrates things the same the same time as the other churches, then they lose their unicity, and they start combining and mixing and losing their doctrinal purity. Without doctrinal purity, there is no orthodox. Then become heterodox like any other thing. Then the name orthodox becomes a sham.
So now, how do you consider your life journey? How do you look back on it now? What kind of, is it a fulfillment of your true calling, your true identity as a Jew? Do you see this as a fulfillment? How do you see this? Is this a conversion? Is this a complete change?
No, it's not a conversion. There's a continuity. A continuity. There was never a break. A break, because a Jew, there is something that is in the scriptures. Jesus says first to give to the children of the kingdom, and then to the people from the outside. And then later is when Paul started preaching to the Greek and Greco-Roman world. Then that was the big difference. Then he separates the Church of Jerusalem, that is the Jewish church, from the Gentile church. Then a Jew needs to take upon himself the whole burden, because the law itself is light. It's not heavy. It's not something that is difficult for a Jew to keep, because the grace was born with that grace.
Explain that, though. It sounds like you're saying that Jews live by a different law than Christians.
It's not exactly different law, but it's a different status. For example, a monk has different rules of life than a layman. It's very different. Even the priesthood doesn't make such a difference as the monastic. A married priest, in many ways, is like a regular married man that happens to be consecrated. I need to be better than, I need to have more, be like a vir probatus, means a man that is already tested, that is a righteous man, but that's it. But a monk already has a different lifestyle. A Jew has a different lifestyle because it's his nature. Then that's the reason why St. Paul talks about the olive tree and the oleander. Then the people from the outside are the oleander branches inserted into the Jewish root, but the Jew is the original plant.
If you now, as an Orthodox Christian and a Jew, you have to live by a different lifestyle than a Protestant who becomes baptized?
Yes.
Explain that. I mean, what way? In what way is your life different than a Protestant Orthodox Christian, a former Protestant?
A few ways. The number thing is you have an adherence to some practices that you need to do. For example, a Jew is obliged to pray early morning prayers, at least the 6th hour, the Vespers, and the compline in private.
Well, this may be news to many Orthodox Christians, but that's required of us Orthodox Christians.
Exactly.
All of us.
Exactly.
How is that different from a Jewish convert?
No, in that way doesn't differ. No, it's not. But that's what people don't understand, why need to be done like that.
So as a Jew, you're fulfilling the tradition that from
Correct.
the time of the apostles. Would you consider that you betrayed your Jewish background, your Jewish faith?
No.
Why not?
Because I love my nation. I wouldn't do anything against my nation, and simply it's an advance. It's a completion. It's a completion to ascend to a higher level.
So what do you consider yourself now?
A Jew who found Christ.